Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Reed. I'm here with the Toronto Business Journal, and we have a very exciting panel today about the alien agenda and transhumanism. So we have four very wonderful guests here today, and I'm just going to give everyone a brief introduction. So we have Rebecca Hardcastle-Wright. She's a PhD, and she is a leading expert in exo-consciousness and the extraterrestrial presence. She is committed to building an exo-conscious civilization co-created by humans, ETs, and multidimensional beings. Very interesting. Rebecca founded I-EXO. Is that correct? The Institute of Exoconsciousness. Oh, there we go, right there. And in 2016, and that was in 2016, to shift experiencers into exoconscious entrepreneurs. I look forward to talking a bit more about that. Then we have Timofey Egorov, and here's a bio. Graduated Moscow Aviation Institute with a degree in life support systems of airborne vehicles in 2011. He's working as the trainer of cosmonauts at the Gagarin Cosmonauts Training Center in Star City, Russia, since 2014. Very cool. General Director of the Association of Researchers of the Unknown Phenomena of Nature, Cosmos, and Human Abilities, Ecology of the Unknown. And that has been since 2019. We have Reed Summers. Reed is the son of Marshall Vion Summers, and for over 3 decades, Marshall's books and teachings have spoken to a vast new revelation given to prepare humanity for the great economic, social, and environmental change that is coming to the world, and for humanity's emergence into a universe of intelligent life and the hidden reality of contact, which is taking place in the world today. So for over 12 years, Reed has been working with Marshall as a teacher and a representative for the Divine Revelation and for the Allies of Humanity Briefings, which is a revolutionary set of texts which reveal the secret agenda of those ET forces present in our world and provide a clear picture of what those forces are, why they are here, and what they are doing at this critical time in Earth. Okay, excellent bio. And last but most certainly not least, we have Laura Magdalene Eisenhower, and she is an intuitive astrologist, presenter, cosmic mythologist, and of course the great granddaughter of Dwight David Eisenhower, who was a US president. He was one of the highest ranking American generals in the United States history. And of course he served as president for 8 years, which I wasn't there, but I heard they were great. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for being here. The topic today is transhumanism, and I think we're just gonna jump right into it. Explain to me like I am 5 years old, like I know nothing about transhumanism. Explain to me in brief, what is transhumanism?
Transhumanism is the integration of technology and science, for example, genetic engineering, synthetic biology, into the human body for its enhancement and advancement. And that comes in many ways, shapes, and forms.
Okay. All right. So does anyone else want to add into that? Seems like we all have work sort of in the transhumanist realm. Does that pretty much cover it?
Well, I guess yes. Well, in my opinion, transhumanism is when you try to improve the human with some technical means, replace some organs maybe, in order to somehow prolong his lifetime maybe. But I don't know if this is the right way to improve ourselves.
Okay, so I mean, on its face, it sounds like, that might be a good thing. If we could use technology to increase, our lifespan in whatever way, let's say our strength, our stamina, or whatever it might be, wouldn't that be a good thing? And I guess I wonder, has this process already started? And do you think, and where do you think it's leading?
I would say it's definitely already started. It's weaponized. I mean, technology can be very beneficial, but when it has to do with siphoning and harvesting life force and putting humans sort of in a assimilation with artificial intelligence to the point of becoming almost hive mind, not having control over your own thoughts, then there's a problem there. I would say it definitely relates to Draco reptilian energies and the fact that they compromise their DNA, and this is kind of their life cycle. They need us as a food source. And so they utilize technology in order to have a food source. They put their DNA into a reversal 10 DNA strand coding and put an artificial tree of life overlay on the planetary grid network with a lot of dark technologies to siphon and take energy from humans to generate artificial timelines that are leading us down a trajectory that we really don't want to go. So we need to maintain sovereignty, learn the right use of technology, but be spiritually responsible. And so it's definitely begun, and it's not looking so good out there with the different tactics that they use, the skies being sprayed, stuff in our bodies, GMOs, all these different methods to really kind of break us down, disconnect us from the soul matrix and intuition to the point where we become genetically modified and even more of a slave race. And they've already attempted to try and make us so.
Okay. Wow. So when you say sovereignty, that word kind of stuck out in my head. Do we have like an independent responsibility to maintain our own sovereignty, I guess, against the forces that are trying to integrate our day-to-day lives and ultimately our I guess our DNA? Is that a responsibility? And certainly, can you shape that out a little bit for me? What does that look like?
Yeah, real quick. So somebody else to give their thoughts on it. I would say absolutely. I think sovereignty is really important, but it's to me a prerequisite to unity consciousness. It doesn't mean, oh, it's all about me. It's not a service to self thing. It's definitely service to others. But sovereignty to the point where we can spiritually develop and we can maintain a direct connect with spirit and source energy on our own terms, not through a program or belief systems. And I think life experience really gives us what we need in order to develop that. But social engineering and mind control has made it very difficult. So sovereignty is just having command over your body and your space, having boundaries where necessary, but also thinking about the collective and just being in integrity, I think is a huge piece. So sovereignty, being independent, I think I'm meaning more like spiritual sovereignty, where we're not dismissing the need to think on a collective level, but not to the point where we're trying to get somebody into a new world order or one-way world of thinking.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
Wow. So Rebecca, you do work with exo-consciousness. What Laura was saying here, do you think that there's any sort of like crossover with that? And do you think exo-consciousness, first of all, could you explain exo-consciousness a little bit for the people here who don't really know? And could you perhaps tell us how exo-consciousness might be used in order to, let's say for now, to respond to transhumanism?
So exoconsciousness is defined as the innate human ability. So it's the old word for it would be cosmic consciousness, that humans have an innate cosmic consciousness that, as Laura was laying out, the race of Dracos or whatever other extraterrestrial multidimensional race, that we have the innate human ability to connect, communicate, and importantly for the Institute, co-create with extraterrestrials and multidimensionals. So we believe a significant part of exoconsciousness is just awareness of the timelines, awareness of the possible manipulations, awareness of the possible benefits that we gain from these different races. And as humans, as what we call exoconscious humans, be able to create a world where we are morally sovereign individuals who have not only a responsibility to self, but also to our planet, those around us, and out into the cosmos, that what the actions that we do reverberate out much further than we ever imagined. And exoconscious become aware of that. For us, the issue for exoconscious humans, the issue is not what different races of ETs are doing to be aware of that, but to bring the emphasis back into humans. So what are we doing? What are we allowing other humans on this earth to do with, for example, transhumanism? And it's my belief that at this point, what we're seeing with transhumanism, and by the way, it's quite old. It's an old philosophy. Let's say that. It's an ancient philosophy. It's not really new. The technology may be new, going back to the 1800s, late 1800s, in terms of certainly in the 30s, it ramped up with cybernetics and computers. But what's happened with all of these advancements is that we are seeing humans themselves overlay other humans with what I like to call an artificial field of consciousness. So there's actually an artificial field of consciousness that's being overlaid humans that we will be sometimes maybe forced. Sometimes we've been sort of given breadcrumbs or little rewards along the way so that we get into this field of consciousness. But that field itself is not just going to be changing humans, it's going to be changing all life forms on Earth. That's the whole point. It's not just humans are becoming hybrids, it's the fact that all life forms on Earth are becoming genetically modified, as well as the weather, as well as the cosmos. So this is a big agenda that's happening, and we need to be aware of it.
Okay, begs a question to me. Are our genetics being modified now without our knowing? Is this something that's happening? Is there any way to to be able to tell if that's happening, and how could you tell? What are some signs?
Genetics are being modified by 3 primary delivery systems. So as Laura mentioned, it's the air, it's the pharmaceuticals, and it's our food. So nanotechnology is being placed in many shapes and forms in all of those delivery systems here on the planet.
The vaccine?
It's part of it.
Interesting. So I guess show of hands, who here has been vaccinated? Just one.
If I may just back up and just kind of provide a little bit more of a 100,000-foot view of this, from my perspective, at least, before we get into vaccines and the pandemic and all the delivery systems for genetic manipulation. I think it's just important to establish that we are the native peoples of Earth. And as the native or indigenous peoples, we have the need to maintain sovereignty, and that is at all levels: genetic, biological, psychic. And before we get into what we're doing to each other and the agendas and the players in the world, I think it's just very important to establish that contact is underway. And of course, there's mounting evidence for this. There's a huge multi-decade body of evidence, and that we are sharing this world now with non-human intelligence, which I would consider to be super intelligent. And so in a sense, AI, the greatest fears of AI, that a super intelligence would arrive in this world within decades, it would outperform or out-adapt us and potentially eliminate us from the equation, may already be here. We just didn't create it. It's an extraterrestrial super intelligence. And so based on the information that I've been given and that I've been studying, there is an effort to genetically modify the human race. And so in essence, this super intelligence is already acting, but not in accord with our goals. So they have their goals, we have ours. And so their attempts to do what they do, which we can talk more about, what are they doing, why are they doing it, are inherently in conflict with our goals, or what should be our goals as the native or indigenous people of this planet. And where we stand as the indigenous people is that we're an adolescent race. We're disunified. We're 200 plus countries. We're at war with each other at many levels, and so we're not even in a position to step forward as a unified world to interact with these life forms, to negotiate their goals with our goals, to do diplomacy at that level. So that's where I view us at this moment. We are a native race that is stepping out of adolescence and isolation into a larger universe of life. And we are encountering super intelligent forces that already engage in genetic manipulation of those they interact with. And I think that that's pretty treacherous until we understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and we become more unified in our perspective on that.
Wow. So to say the very least, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. You think largely people don't really know about this. They don't really know about the sort of forces at play. The fact that it's a multi-dimensional, is plot the right word? Is it like a plot that
well, I think we before we make assumptions about multidimensionality, where I start is that there could be a multidimensional aspect, but we are encountering physical beings on this physical plane that we exist at. And so I consider contact to be an event of nature. And therefore I look to nature and also to human history, which is an expression of nature, to understand what happens with first contact between species, what happens between first contact between the indigenous and the technologically advanced. And in almost every case, it is tragic. And it's tragic for specific reasons that largely sit on the native camp or the native side of the fence. It's not so much the technology was so overwhelmingly powerful that it took over the continent in years. It's more the response of the native peoples, their disunity, their internal division, that kind of sowed the seeds for their demise. And so, Jesse, I do think we're at great risk. I don't look to the extraterrestrial presence, threat, or the government interaction with that as the kind of fulcrum point of action. Like, I think it rests with us, the native peoples. We have work to do, a lot of work to do. And when we do that work, we become more sovereign and more secure at almost every level. You could say genetic, psychic, physical, at every level. So that's where I like to locate the kind of the center of focus.
Okay, so as one human being, as an island, what can I do today? And Timothy,
Yes.
would you like to perhaps ring in on this? We haven't really heard you yet. Let's...
Yes, I would like to add something regarding transhumanism and what can we do. From our point of view, of course, there are some big tech companies which produce some leapfrogging technology or some technology that is intended to replace some organs of human body or add something new, so to improve human in some artificial way. But I think, and we think that there is a way to improve and to develop our body, our biological body, because you may know that the brain capacity of the human is used only by 4 or 5% throughout his life. So we merely use our brain by 4 or 5%. And what are the rest of 95%? So that's a huge capacity inherent in us. And if we go maybe this way, not the improvement of technology, technical progress, but the improvement of ourselves as humans and of our body. And who knows what our body is capable of. Maybe you heard there are many cases when humans show some extra abilities. When someone can lift some heavy thing, or pilots, they sense that the time when there is an emergency case and they have to catapult, they have to use their catapult. Almost every pilot testifies that there is a slow in time, like the time slows. And they have all the time in the world to make the right decision, what to do, where to look, what trigger to engage. So this is some phenomenal abilities of our body that we don't know yet. But if we study this, if we go this way, improvement of ourselves, not technology. Maybe there is a there is a way to even change our genes
Really?
consciously. Yes.
How's that? Does that involve like meditation, or how does that work?
We believe that it works like you step by step, you're taking control over your body. First of all, what can you do right now? You can, at your will, you can stand up, you can walk around, you can look left, look right. So you have some control over your body. And maybe when you take on this path and you, we think that this is through a raising of your consciousness, through a raising of your ethics, because there are some enormous abilities that we can have. And if you don't have a certain level of ethics, you can use this as weapon.
Yeah.
That's why we see maybe some ET craft, some extraterrestrial sightings. They behave in an extraordinary way, but they are always peaceful, because this is some fundamental law of the universe that you cannot go into the other world if you can bring harm. You just don't have this knowledge. You cannot have this knowledge of this technology to travel through the universe if you don't have a certain level of ethics, because otherwise you can harm other people. And if we go this way, develop our ethics and raise our consciousness through this, we can get this knowledge of how to take control of your body. And then you can control of course, you can control your breathing, maybe your heart, your internal organs. You can, if you go deeper, you can control how cells, what is happening inside your cells. There are millions of chemical reactions going on right now, right here. This is a whole universe inside us. So as outside as it is inside. So if we somehow learn this and master this, then we can go even deeper into the nucleus of our cells and into the genes and modify the genes. But at that moment, you will have such level of morality, of ethics, that you can only improve yourself and improve the world. You will not be you will not have an intention to harm. So this is our take on this. What can we do? Learn ourselves, develop our ethics, and make a little shift from technical progress to human progress.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I understand. So with ethics, with morals, with a certain form of discipline, you can perhaps access deeper levels that might expand, go past your own, waking consciousness. You can sort of stop your stomach from growling, or however, and then you get deeper and deeper, and eventually you might even be able to write your own DNA. Is that like an accurate layman's sort of summation of what you just communicated to me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I guess my next question is, we have these ambivalent forces, and their mission is to sort of drain us of that life force, which obviously is very valuable. It's very valuable to us. We just don't necessarily always know that or appreciate that. So it's very easy to get snatched away. And I'd imagine, especially when you don't have the autonomy over yourself, you don't have the autonomy over your own energy and what you are in fact responsible for, what you are in fact putting out into the universe and putting out into the world. It can be taken. It can be, stolen. So I guess I have maybe a two-part question. Number one is, how do negative forces steal our energy? How do they do that? And then I guess my next question I forgot, but that's a big question. The first one. Why don't we go with that?
So that's enough to start with right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I can chime in first on this since, representing the Allies of Humanity briefings, which is probably the most clear expose of the alien agenda and the 4 areas of their activity, one of which is genetic manipulation of humanity. But the other is what the Allies call the pacification program, which is a program of both physical installations and also the projection of power in the mental environment, the environment of thought, the psychic environment, to basically disable critical thought, personal responsibility, and also sow the seeds for conflict, distrust, disunity between each other. And so that may not be a very deep explanation of how they're influencing, but it is at the level of thought and emotion, and that right there drains it right out of us. And so again, there were some assumptions or statements made that I feel are based on assumptions that are kind of dangerous here. If we say, well, if they made it this far to Earth, they must have transcended some boundary line in consciousness where they had to give up aggression, ego, evil, and embrace some sort of unified consciousness of the universe in order to technically get here. I think that's completely ridiculous. I don't think that's the case at all. There's no reason why that should be so. I mean, there's multiple ways to create a peaceful world. One of them is a prison. A prison is pretty peaceful as well. And so to say, well, they got here, they developed that technology, that's proof of anything is just a giant assumption. And also, they are doing things that are extremely destructive in the world. So the belief that everything they're doing is positive and there's no sign of anything negative is just cherry picking the data to see it a certain way, I feel. I mean, take the alien abduction phenomenon, the accounts of thousands, tens of thousands of people who have been emotionally damaged, physically experimented upon, taken and not returned in some cases. That is a body of testimony that has to be accounted for right there. So,
Rebecca, would you like to respond to that? That's sort of jumping off of Timmy Faye's statement, but would you like to, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, 2 things. First, I want to respond to Timothy because I work as a therapist with critically ill patients. I work with a physician, and he's kind of the physician of last resort, I guess you would say. We do a lot of DNA testing, and I've actually seen in my practice people's DNA change because of their emotional healing, because of their physical healing, because of how they orient themselves in the earth and on the earth and with other humans and with themselves. So I think the idea that we can change our DNA, and of course, a lot of this goes, of course, into epigenetics, which is sort of like I equate epigenetics to kind of the pedals on the piano. Are you going to play it loud? You're going to play it soft? How are you going to play it? Are you going to enhance a part of DNA? Or are you going to soften it so that it isn't as expressive in your life? So I absolutely agree with him about that. As for what Reed said, of course, I've been in this field professionally. First of all, I'm a childhood experiencer. So I've really never known life without being aware of an extraterrestrial presence. And I that makes my take on this a little bit different. But because I've been in this field as a researcher and a therapist, of course, I've run into a lot of people that have had horrific things happen to them. And you brought up the idea of how do we protect ourselves? I think that humans are talking about the soft and the loud. So we're living in a culture that's actually just opening every gate for humans to be attacked by forces that they don't know anything about because they're either drunk or high or checked out or whatever. You just don't know what's happening. You're in an altered state. You don't know what's happening around you. That's how you stumble into these areas. And I see it all the time in my practice where your whole mental life, it just disintegrates. And it's probably one of the more tragic things that I have to deal with. And to see just on a personal level of watching that happen. But I also have a hard time because I think it's a pretty slippery slope to start to blame all the extraterrestrials for all of the human misery that we're creating around ourselves. because I think humans, as they become exoconscious, have the ability to start to say, wait a minute, we're responsible for this. You know, I'm responsible for the integrity of my human body, for the integrity of my relationships with other people, with my integrity of my community on out into the cosmos. And to think that I'm being ruled by another force, because as Reed said, you know, we're the native species. Maybe we've been tinkered with, I don't doubt that, but we are the native species here on Earth. And I would also like to add to Timothy, he's talking about the biological enhancement that we can do internally within ourselves, is to also add the fact that as we go inward, we also go outward. And as we begin to look at the human, not just as a brain and a nervous system, but as a being, an intelligent being in a field of consciousness, that opens amazing doorways that we can pick and choose of our own volition. To whom are we going to relate, and to whom are we going to set boundaries? And I think that's the crossroads that humanity is right now. And I think that sometimes I'm a mom, so I got a lot of kids. And sometimes you see your kids, they just like, all of a sudden it's like, wow, like, when did you become an adult at 13? Like, they just have this incredible wisdom that overcomes them, and you're just in awe of it. And I think that's what's happening to humans now. If we keep telling ourselves that we're in kindergarten and we're stupid, well, we'll probably stay in kindergarten and stupid. But if we say that we can exponentially launch into this area where we are morally and philosophically and spiritually responsible, we can do that. And we can be 13 and do it.
And that's a great point, Rebecca and Timothy. You made that point as well, that instead of getting into technology and the technical pursuit of editing ourselves as a species, maybe we should focus on how we are, who we are, how we act, how we think, what we say. I know it's not sexy and exciting as much as technology is, but it does, you could say, back engineer. You know, it does engineer down into us powerfully. You know, the power of mind over matter is a definite reality. I think in the context of this conversation, it's just really important to understand that we're not alone in our own world. You know, there is another intelligence here on Earth, and the mere power of that intelligence produces influence. Just like, you know, Rebecca, you with your kid, you know, you're way more mature, been through way more, you're more concentrated, and you influence them without saying anything. Like, the influence of a parent to a child is very real. So we have another intelligence in our world that could be influencing us in some very powerful ways. And that's why I'm very leery of embracing any sort of technological gift from beyond. A, we don't know how to use it. B, it could easily be, you know, a McDonald's toy, you know, in a little brown paper bag in exchange for the keys to the island, you know, and it's inherently divisive as well. I mean, to offer technology to one nation, one military, one government, knowing that this is not a united world. You know, you give it to the Americans and the Russians are left out. You give it to the Chinese and the Americans are left out. It's inherently divisive. And a lot of what we hear from those who have had contact are promises of peace, power, and technology from forces that say they are enlightened, say they are beyond war, that they're here to, you know, teach us what we need to know, heal the climate crisis, elevate us. Big promises, totally not backed up by discernible evidence based on what they're doing, and totally unwise. Like, Rebecca, in the case of kids, like, would you give an iPhone to a 6-year-old and say, go off with it? That iPhone is engineered to change them, you know, to tap into their psychology in ways a 6-year-old, 7-year-old cannot manage. And so the technological aspect of transhumanism is pretty concerning. Especially when we humans try to do it to ourselves, because there are another set of actors in the background that could easily be feeding the technology to do so, but to what end? So I think this is a time to get grounded in our native wisdom and our native histories, our multiple histories, and not just, you know, give over the planet. because someone else is here saying X, Y, or Z. It's like that is not a logical and real first working assumption as the native peoples, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in on what you guys are saying. And that's, gosh, it's so thorough to just hear everybody's, thoughts. So, I mean, when we look at energy vampirism, usually a person's cut off from source energy. They're kind of in their ego. There's manipulative tactics, maybe passive aggression, maybe acting out wounds and traumas and projecting them and not really taking responsibility to find wholeness within. So we see that amongst people and in relationships. Sometimes a person feels very drained or energetically depleted, or they're giving their power away. And I mean, we have so much sort of illness and fear of, death, to the point where we're not plugged into our intuition and our higher guidance anymore. And so when we're looking at the system in the larger picture sense of the word, it's cut off from source, and it's a vampiric system. It's a parasitic system. If it was enough to just spray us and put nanites in our food and water and use all these different tactics to assimilate us into AI, they wouldn't have the false media, they wouldn't have the propaganda, they wouldn't have false narratives, they wouldn't have social engineering and indoctrination in university, school systems, and entertainment industry. If it was just enough to use weapons on us, they need our minds, they need our belief systems, they need our distortions, they need us to live in sub-personalities and not authenticity. When we're in a truth frequency, we amp up our light body, we gain strength, we're able to spiritually mature and grow and go through the sort of organic unfolding of who we really are and what we came here to discover, which I feel is our junk DNA. And to understand that it's not junk, it's the greatest treasure. And we activate these dormant strands through the frequency of love, alchemical marriage, hierogamic union, and we rebuild the DNA structure all the way up to 12 strand and beyond by developing this polarity integration within ourselves of electric, magnetic, masculine, feminine, and even the planet Uranus. It's electrical. It's like a tuning fork to source energy, to the point where if we're maintaining a truth frequency and we're being ourselves, we're being real and true to ourselves, we can get upgraded. And like Pluto takes us through death, but then also rebirth and transformation and alchemy. So I feel we can turn the lead into gold, and that we can de-weaponize the technology if we can get our minds back. So shutting off devices, shutting off the television, and doing a digital detox so that you're sure that your thoughts are your own, I feel is the way to protect ourselves. And I feel that's very contagious. It's the override frequency. It connects into the collective consciousness, and it helps to uplift humanity out of the net, out of these trappings. But we have to be more real with each other and supportive, because the conquer and divide is insane. You're either anti this or that, right or left, pro this, against that. And I feel like the love frequency is what's going to get us through. It doesn't matter if a person decided to get it or not get it. You know what I mean? The thing doesn't matter. When it divides us, though, and it pits us against each other, that's the problem. So to me, it's all about energy and frequency. AI can only assimilate low frequency. That's why fear tactics, things to put us in constant survival and anxiety, is where it can put its hooks in. And there's technologies like the Nephilim reversal grid, the Nibirian dyadic crystal, and it's put in different parts of the planetary grid network, and they're harvesting stations. So just like somebody can drain us energetically, they can use implants and different methods to steal the life force. And of course, when we look at the core cabal deep state tactics, I mean, it's right there, immediate vampirism, child sacrifice, satanic ritual abuse, and using innocence and stealing innocence because they've lost that direct connect. They can only vampire. So we have to look at what's vampiring from us, cut the cords, and divorce the imposter so that we can have a true, authentic love experience, love story with creation, and get the rest of ourselves back.
Wow.
Need to put a beat to that, Laura. That's a hip hop tune waiting to be made.
I mean,
it really does beg that, but I do want to urge folks to be careful not to try to connect all the dots. Some of the dots are not connected. Now, I know it's true. The universe is inherently fully connected, but when we talk about all these different phenomena, if we all wrap it into one bundled, coherent conspiracy of life, I think we're just not going to be in the truth zone at all. And Rebecca, I resonate with what you said on that, which is we can't make ET or any external actor the reason why this, and this is true. I mean, humanity has been here for, millions of years developing. We have our own psychological, evolutionary, and survival strategies at work. So, personality types, all of that, I mean, that is inherent to us as a race. May we have been tinkered with, Rebecca? I would agree with you on that, probably. But to bundle it all and to try to derive a next step from that is a bit of a crazy rubber band ball in my experience.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I could imagine a lot of these things are connected. Of course, it's all connected, could be a little bit more peripheral. It's almost a tactic in and of itself to get lost and confused in that melee of different theories. You mentioned the cabal and the child sacrifice. Obviously, this to me is terrifying. I couldn't be further from these sort of like QAnon theories, but I don't know, for some reason, I believe that one. I don't know why.
Let me just say something, because you said that. Yeah, I've been researching this before. I never really followed Q ever. I didn't really need to, because I already knew this stuff because I work with victims directly. Kathy O'Brien's one of my best friends. She is an MK Ultra survivor. She wrote Transformation of America. And I regularly interview and work with people that are survivors. And they have a lot of commonalities with what they went through, and they're not looking for attention. They're not looking for fame. A lot of them don't want to be public. And they just come to me and they share because they know that I can handle it, even though I really can't. I'm like, yeah, I think there's infiltration of the whole Q thing. And sometimes psyops are dropped into these kind of places to undermine what they represent. And it's really unfortunate because there were a lot of important points that were being brought up in all of that. But I wasn't a big follower of it. I've been speaking on the subject since 2010, but it's the direct connect with victims that did it for me, not internet searching or following somebody outside of a direct person in their experience. And also growing up in the Eisenhower family, I mean, there's none of that in my particular family line. I thought there might be because it's not uncommon in presidential bloodlines. So I'm like, oh shoot, so I'm doing like hypnoregression, like what if, maybe, and I didn't see any of that in our family, but just being in that energy, living years in Washington, DC, and just all the research that I've done and all the whistleblower testimony. Unfortunately, yeah, this stuff is going on, and we're part of this greater ritual. The whole masking is a ritual. Everything that we're seeing in the world today and the different tactics that they use is a part of this greater ritual. And we see it in the entertainment industry with the symbolism. And there's no doubt that Bohemian Grove has events and that there's a real globalist agenda, and they're all caught up in this kind of stuff. And it's more prevalent than we can imagine. How many politicians, how many leaders, how many celebrities, how many sports people are caught up in this. And they're lots of them are victims, like MK Ultra, Monarch programming. And the stories it's not for everyone. I don't recommend people go down those rabbit holes, but hopefully they can be supportive of those that are willing and put the whole Q thing aside, because I really know that the ones that do follow it are really looking to protect the children, and they've been given a bad rap, I feel. But I think there's a lot of cuckoo sort of ridiculousness out there too that just kind of makes it look bad, and just, you know what I mean? I just wanted to...
Well, I mean, on the topic of false flags, so Reed was mentioning a little bit about the a unified sort of cause, like a unified, unity among humans is really the only way that we can actually have a real productive, sort of dialogue. Could there possibly be a false flag that would be used in an attempt to unify us, to then, I guess, gain control of that narrative and possibly just keep the fun alive and keep stealing our life force, through a global world government? And why don't we start with Rebecca, because it seems like
was it Reagan that said that to Gorbachev? Are you going to protect us if they invade us? Are we going to have all hands on deck if they come into Earth and take us out? I think that that's been talked about. That scenario has been talked about for a long time. And it's also the basis of a lot of religion too, quite frankly. So a lot of religious belief systems are. That's why when you talk about going into the field of consciousness, you have to go into it with your eyes wide open. There's not one person I know of that's an experiencer or is into UFOs that hasn't also gone deeply into mind control and the ramifications of mind control, whether it's sexual abuse or nanotechnology in our heads. But we're being lured down that path right now with, I don't know if you've been reading about Facebook and Oculus, their investment in Oculus, the VR goggles. And I mean, it's really not taking off. It's kind of been a big dud, but those are the little crumbs that get dropped of, oh, just put on these goggles. And, right now, Jesse, we could all be sitting there with our Oculus goggles and be in this meeting in a whole different kind of metaverse way. And that's step number one to, you like those goggles so much. Why don't we just drop those implants into you or give you this shot with some nanotechnology in it? I mean, everything is building blocks toward accomplishing that. And I don't understand why some people want to do that. Maybe, a lot of it's what Laura just explained, but I wanted to ask Timofey, because Russia has such a dramatic psychic history, and the United States did too for a long time with Stanford Research Institute and Duke University and Princeton, and a lot of channeling and mediumship, evolutionary eras that moved through America historically. But it seems like that cord was cut in America. And so instead of having a psychic cord in America to lead us into future scenarios or future visioning, we have what's called artificial intuitive intelligence that lays out the scenario. And I was just wondering if in Russia, does your psychic strength still reside in your country?
Thank you. I guess yes. And I'll tell you more. What we found out is that really, and Laura spoke about it and Reed spoke about it, that we are native here. All the states, all the nations, we are like one. Well, we're one humanity, right? One organism of humanity living on our planet Earth. And I'm speaking here on behalf of our organization, on behalf of all the people that are involved in it. And I'm just trying to explain it with my own words. And what we understood here in Russia is that each race out there in the universe, humanity in that number, is in charge of its star system. So, humanity is in charge of the solar system because we live here. It's our home, and the planet Earth is our home. And what is going to happen with us and with our planet, we decide. And that's why the extraterrestrials, when they come, they cannot interfere directly. That will be breaking the law because we are in charge of it. We decide what is going to happen. Maybe we can say that, oh, that's too much. I cannot handle it. And we give up and it all dies and destroys and we destroy ourselves. But we can decide that we've had enough of wars. We had enough of divide and conquer. Now it's time for cooperation. It's time for connection, for love. And we just go on this path. We switch and other races, if there are, and we know 100% that there are many races out there in the universe, humanoid races, physical like us. They just give us hints, they give us warnings, they shut down our nuclear missiles when we try to launch them. There were many cases of such happening in the USA, in Russia, and we have people who are directly involved in that cases, who took positions being military generals and were in charge of collecting data about these cases, data of UFOs coming and fixing nuclear arsenals because there were some malfunctions going on there, very dangerous, or shutting down when they were trying to be launched, those missiles. So they try to warn us, they try to care about us, because we are their younger brothers and they are our elder brothers, like our galactic neighbors. So what I'm trying to say is that what's wrong with us? It's the divide and conquer. And who does this? We do this. So that's the time of change. And now we are awakening to this. And we just start, let's go on this path of cooperation. And so that's the way out. Did I answer the question? What was the question? I forgot. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Jesse. Is it okay if I clarify the question?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was wondering, in your space program, for example, do you still utilize Russian psychics? Just to be, for example, Edgar Mitchell went to the moon and did the cards and did ESP experiments on his way back. So I was wondering if you were still using that in your space.
To my knowledge, it's not. It's not there. But currently, we try to introduce this knowledge to the program of preparation of cosmonauts. But there is some bureaucracy. There is some bureaucracy going on, and it's hard to do. But it will be in the future, I'm sure. And what is interesting, what's happening to all cosmonauts and astronauts as soon as they go to space and see the planet from above, from the International Space Station, through the window. It is called the overview effect. Maybe you heard of it. It's a change in your consciousness. When you see the planet from the side, you immediately understand, and it comes to you, it hits you, and you cannot get away from it, that we are one. We are one, and this is our planet, and we cannot be hostile to each other. That's a phenomenon that almost each cosmonaut speaks about when interviewed by mass media, or what was his best impression of going to space. That's the overview effect. That's a change in consciousness. That's interesting. That's phenomenal. I think if we all had a chance to see our planet from the side, or maybe we just need to look at ourselves from the side, then there will be a change. So let's take a look.
That's, I think, the power of perspective. I mean, that more than transhuman, transgenic technological manipulation of ourselves, how about seeing ourselves from a broader perspective as a planet in space, part of a greater community of worlds? The Allies of Humanity briefings, that's one of the first things they say, is we're here to give you a greater community perspective, because you cannot have that in your world. You need to be outside your world, as we are. And so that's an immediate gift, is just to see ourselves as a world, and to be able to just experience that historical timeline of millions of years of development, billions of years of planetary development, And here we are in this moment on a precious Earth, probably a pretty rare type of planet in the universe. And so, man, that causes change regarding how you see everything: the climate, the environment, energy, international relations, for example. So I do think that's a huge component in what needs to happen is this expanded perspective. And it's not cosmological, it's not theological, it's not only for the Christians, only for the New Agers. It's anybody can have that overview effect moment without going into space. And that's an experience that I think people need. I think it would be very healing, actually. This kind of acute feeling of like, here you are on Earth, almost like you're in a prison cell you can't get out of, you can't make sense of, you can't expand here. So the need to expand is probably a very commonly felt human need right now. And there are definitely forces trying to change that into a contraction, an experience of contraction.
Right, unless you're Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, who have been actively trying to colonize space. Do you think that that's just because they have money that they, why are some of the richest people in the world in a private space race right now?
Well, if I could just jump in here, after the last World War and the detonation of nuclear weapons and the conflict and environmental destruction that followed, there appeared in our skies a new set of forces who had not been here prior. And they're here because they care about the world, but for their reasons. And they've been introducing technology and making deals in the background for some decades. And in my view, it's the mother of all conspiracies. It's like, why did all of this start happening in the 50s and the 60s? Laura, the Eisenhower family, it was very much there for the offing of some of this. But why? Why in the last 70 years? And I believe it's the arrival of non-human forces from beyond, and their attempt to interact and to bring technology or gifts of technology into the human race. And that, to me, is a divide and conquer strategy. It's inherently divisive. And it has caused some of what you're referring to, Jesse. Why are there these arms races? Well, I would contest that it's because there are new arms in the world. There is new technology to produce new arms races, to create black budgets, to create, the compartmentalizing of governments into deep states, states that are not even in relationship anymore to elected states. Why did all of that happen? It could be because there's an intervening force in our world.
Wow. Laura, did you want to respond directly to that?
Oh, yeah. Well, they've been tinkering with the planetary grid network for a long time. We used to exist in a much, vaster terrain, Lyra, Orion, where the original wars took place, stepped down into the harmonic universe of Tara. Tiamat explodes. We sink down into this lower harmonic universe, and it's like this new sort of, creation. And a lot of different wars took place that we don't even hear about. We don't learn about this stuff in our history books. I'm not saying I have it all correct, so kind of take it or leave it, anybody in the audience and you guys, of course. But from my research, electrical wars, Nephilim wars, Lemurian Holocaust, Atlantean cataclysms, and and then Maldek explosion. So all these different things threw the planetary access off to the point where they were able to control the planetary grid network and the stargates. And because root races came about, 7 root races and also 5 cloister races, which are considered the star seeds, which 7 + 5 makes 12 to rebuild our DNA architecture. They've been doing everything possible to keep us from remembering that this is what we're here for, to share codes and share different frequencies with each other so we can rebuild this architecture. That's why we don't come in the same. Diversity is a great blessing so that we can harmonize our energies together. But if we do that, then they don't have a food source. So these are fallen groups. Some might say fallen angels or a negative alien agenda connected to this. And then the hybrids being, those that are kind of hiding behind the scenes in these alliances, these dark alliances. But on the world stage, in a more kind of obvious way, the treaties began in about 1933. And a lot of the blame is put on Eisenhower. And I've learned a lot from Alex Collier and Elena Donnan, who are contactees, that said MJ12 did this behind his back. He's been the scapegoat. And basically, if they can convince people that the good guys are the bad guys and the bad guys are the good guys, then people are going to give their trust over to those that don't have our best interests at heart. And people don't want to look at concepts like New World Order or depopulation or some of the things that they've even said in speeches and they've said out loud. It says so on the Georgia Guidestones. So it's all kind of out there, and it has to do with these off-planet groups, not necessarily all off-planet. There's many underground bases, subterranean civilizations as well. But this is a greater galactic war between like Christ, Antichrist, or service to self, service to others. And the fallen groups being service to self, or sort of on a human level becoming like the left-hand path. It's like whatever I can get away with, and it's all about me and nothing else matters. And anything that's based in maybe cosmic or natural laws, or anything that has to maybe do with God, will do the opposite of. And a lot of it is to break the demiurgic veil, because that's not, I mean, that's sort of a lower sort of energy as is.
Which is what?
About it in an inverted way, to the point of screwing us all over to be the ones that benefit, and us, we don't. They don't want to share. So those of us that are benevolent, that are connected to more benevolent groups, it's a completely different type of thing. It has to do with the blossoming of human consciousness and the mother energy, this planet, and the divine blueprint within ourselves, Christ Sophia, whatever one wants to call it. And they're competing with that, because once we're sovereign, once we have that level of freedom, they wouldn't exist anymore. So they're in sort of a survival. That's why they get all crazy, and they have false flags or psychological operations at very significant times where humanity could take a huge leap in consciousness. They want to pull the carpet from underneath us constantly. But the ascension energies are here. It's just we're so distracted over there that we're not allowing this integration process to take place. Sorry, I didn't mean to, I just want to make sure I got that thought out. But I know that's kind of a complicated way to, answer.
Jesse was desperate for some definition of terms back there about a minute or two ago,
which I forgot, but okay. I think I picked up some of it.
Just a lot of like catastrophe has thrown everything sort of out of balance. So it was easy to create junk DNA, amnesia. We'd forget ourselves, lose our galactic memories, so they could rewrite history, indoctrinate us with dead sciences that don't give us the full picture of what we're capable of. So we just get a really limited education, and we don't really question it because we don't remember. We don't learn about this kind of history. And I'm not saying I have it accurate, but I do know that these explosions, these cataclysms, and all these events that took place made the planetary body really vulnerable for this level of invasion, reversal codes, dark mother reversals like the Baphomet that they worship to a certain degree. And it's just all so complicated, but I like to bring it down to simplicity, like how we experience it. When we have suppressed our higher mind or our inner feminine or our divine masculine, or we're kind of, we are healing the creation story within ourselves. We can only win the war within, because it's a war on consciousness. So where are we ungrounded? Where are we thrown off our center? Where are we allowing something to invade us because we haven't taken a breath? We haven't aligned ourselves. But it's a little bit more of an injury than just taking a breath. It's like having your spinal column whacked, and it's taken thousands of years to get the alignment back. And so the ascension window period is all about the galactic cords of Andromeda and Milky Way becoming one again, so that we can activate our dormant DNA and also our galactic chakras. But they're absolutely sabotaging it. And I'm not saying we are, like you guys were saying, we are, because
where does it start? It starts with one breath.
The system, it just, where were we the most advanced? Because these are all different aspects of ourselves. To me, ETs and even negative forces, they're all aspects of ourselves that we're interacting with different places in the timeline to rebuild. But I would say, when we are 12 strand and beyond, we've lost all of that, and we're looking to regain it. And it can't be destroyed, but it can be forgotten and neglected, I would say.
So I guess, okay, so here's my sort of last question on the topic, but and I guess we can move on, but in a daily practice, right, for an absolute beginner, someone tuning in right now, what is something we can do to get in line with our love frequency, as you call it? We're as a sovereign being, how can I access myself? How can I access that love frequency. Obviously, not something that happens overnight, but where's a place to sort of upturn the corner of that flimsy wallpaper there.
Jesse, it's very simple. It's all your positive emotions that you can emanate. So love, tenderness, care, so what have you, etc. So all the positive emotions that you have, they really form and shape your body, your physical body, and the whole reality around you. So, and the question is, what's wrong with us? So where does the negative emotions come out of? And we believe that they come from ego. There is ego in us, and they say we were born with sin, but I guess it's something different. So ego in us, why is there divide and conquer? Lives at the expense of struggle. If there is a struggle, then the ego in you grows and it has its benefit. So that's why there are always like two sides competing with each other. There is rivalry, there are wars. It's the constant struggle between him and me, between men and women, good, evil, God, the devil. So two opposite poles, they always in the struggle. And that's why it's everlasting. And what we can do to transform the situation is eliminate the struggle. So don't choose a side. So there is a conflict, there is a fight or something, and they always want you to choose a side. Is it Black Lives Matter or is it All Lives Matter? So you have to choose a side. Why should you choose? What is our point of view is the point of view from a historical evolutionary point of view, the benefit for the whole humanity. If I choose a side, there will be a struggle. There will be a winner, there will be a war and a loser. But in wars, there are no winners because both sides suffer.
Can I never choose?
Yes. When you never choose, you transcend this. You just go up a step up, and from that perspective, you see the whole situation. You're not in the situation. You rise above it, and you see like an overview effect. When you're in the struggle, you against him or her, and you struggle. You cannot see what's going on wrong because you take part in this. And if you take a moment to look at it from a side, then you can see, and it's very clear that nobody wants wars. Nobody wants to suffer. Nobody wants to die or something. Everybody wants to live a joyful life, happily help each other, give gifts, care about the nature, about your kids, about what have you. That's very simple, right? But when it comes to action, somebody like pulls your hand and you do this. Why do I do this? Why do I do it wrong again? There is something in you that controls you. That's ego. And we call it's a dark side. Let's call it dark side. And the light side, the bright side is your essence. It's your human essence. It's your soul. Call it how you want it. So it's your soul, it's your heart, it's the love, and it has all kinds of manifestations. So what you can do personally is you stick to your human side, human essence. Like you were born human. You have a divine purpose to develop yourself in this world and your star system. So these little steps are every day. Whom can I take care of? My spouse, my kids. then it's your home, then it's your city. You grow bigger, then it's your country, then it's your planet. You gain power with this. You gain force as you go on this path. You become more powerful, and you can handle more. You can take care of others. So maybe this is the way.
Thank you so much. What do you think, Reed? I'm sorry. Let's go to Rebecca, because I think Rebecca's been quiet for the longest here. Let's do Rebecca, and then we'll hear from Reed.
I agree with what Timofey just said, and I would take it to another level. I think one of the things that technology has actually gifted us with is the ability, and I'm not a brain-centric consciousness person. I very much believe that consciousness is a field phenomenon. But what, starting with Bush in 2000 and the brain initiatives, which went over to the Obama brain initiative, that what we found out about the brain and the nervous system has brought a lot of enlightenment to humans. I don't think that we realize the extent to which our early upbringing, we're mammals. And so kind of back to parenthood, we're mammals, and from conception to that first 3 years of life are just an incredibly important time when we're like an animal, and we're imprinted with all the fears and all the belief systems and values of our parents. And it's really until later in life when we begin to wake up and say, kind of what we're going through right now, that doesn't belong to me, that I'm not my mother, I'm not my father, I'm not this belief system, I'm not my religion. And I think part of that waking up that's been going on was gifted to us by technology and by understanding the brain. And I would say a simple thing people could do is to find out what's the best technique they can find to calm their central nervous system. And that central nervous system goes down the front of your body, and it also goes down the back of your body. So it encompasses this whole trunk and head of who you are as a person. And once you realize that, unfortunately, that nervous system likes to be triggered. That's your familiar. You like to be afraid. You like to watch scary things. You like to have drama in your life. And then all of a sudden you can say, but that's not who I am. I don't really feel like that. You can step away from that and begin to calm that nervous system. And that's what kind of gets you into that state where Timofey was talking about, that peaceful state where I'm not fighting with myself, I'm not fighting with other people, but I have this central unity, like Laura and Reed talked about, where I'm in my complete divine nature. And it takes practice and commitment and discipline to get to that point. And it also takes moral responsibility, because you realize that you can make a decision every day to either collude with this wired nervous system that needs to be traumatized, or you can say, that's not who I am anymore. I'm at peace. I'm loving. I'm connected to my divine source. And that's what I work with my clients in doing. And I think it's one of the most important realizations that they can come to, but it takes time. It takes time to move into these areas. It's not a quick fix.
No, I mean, we've got centuries of, if not millennia of damage that's been done. So it's of course, it's not going to happen overnight. Reed, what do you think? What are your comments on the topic?
Oh, I love some of what's being said here. Just going back to what Timothy, you said at the very end, which is we have divine purpose. I think it's really important to acknowledge that. I mean, everyone feels it out for themselves. Do I have a purpose? Is there somewhere I need to go, someone I need to meet, something I need to do? Maybe for some, that's a no. For me, it was always a yes. But that can be a little problematic, because purpose means direction. And it also means movement. And if you're not moving, or if you're moving but not in the right direction, you're going to feel that. And you're going to have what you might call negative emotions, which I think are signs to be heeded and to learn from, more than things to be suppressed or to distance yourself from. I remember a year ago, I saw in the bathroom of a cafe near where I live, famous cafe, one of the most famous in this whole area. Somebody had written, anger is fear, attack is fear, self is fear, fear is bad. And then somebody else wrote next to it, yeah, but fear is a survival response. It can be meaning it can be important to keep you alive. Hello, so I don't really advocate distancing from the negative and going toward the positive as an executive act or decision. Of course, positive is what we want, but I think there's another way to get there. And that would be first, stillness, the power of meditation and stilling the mind so that you can perceive reality itself and move with it and be moved by it. Otherwise, if you're up here where trapped in a nervous system survival response that is going to get triggered unintentionally, but very intentionally as well by whatever advertisements, commercial entities, your parents, or other bigger forces in the world. So to step out of that nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, that survival mechanism, and become still and to listen or to see whatever the sense that you most resonate with in order to get in touch with what is there. So proprioception would be the physical side of that, like feeling the chair under your body. Breathing would be another physical way to approach that. Creating that opening where you can sense into what must I do next? Where is my life meant to go? And with that, again, direction. So you got to be going in the right direction, or you're not going to feel very good, and you may feel some kind of bad stuff, and you may fall prey to some bad stuff. So direction, and then movement. Because if you're not moving and you're not going where you need to go, you're not going to feel well. But instead of suppressing an unwell feeling, I think it's better to make an opening and sense out what's next. And the question that I ask myself frequently, it's my little diagnostic, it's my little navigational aid, is what must I do? What must I do in this situation, in this conversation? And I know people don't like the word must sometimes. It looks kind of like commanding and like there's some entity over you saying, you need to do this. It has maybe that old religion, old God flavor to it. But must is necessity. Must is nature. The trees have to make pine cones. The squirrels have to put nuts in the ground. I mean, otherwise winter comes and if you don't, your species is over. And therefore your opportunity to bring something into form is over. And as a species, we are running up to that cliff edge where it could be over within a count of lifetimes. It could be over, maybe not fully, but maybe largely. And then when you throw in the arrival of extraterrestrial forces who are here to take advantage of our weakness and to claim some aspect of this earth and us as its people, wow, that's almost like an accelerator. That's like the foot on the gas pedal. And we already have our foot on the gas pedal. Look at the climate crisis, right? So movement and direction, personally, which you can access through stilling the mind and through lots of great practices like Rebecca shared, of quieting the nervous system, getting into a different body state. Really important, I think.
Right. Wow. So we have these dark forces essentially attacking our central nervous system. They're manipulating our ego. They are really just kind of flirting with our desires. And what makes that so dangerous is that we're also being encouraged to identify with our egos, identify with those triggers, to say, I am my central nervous system. I am my response to these triggers. So what sounds like stoicism you're describing is the disidentification of the physiological response of fear so that it can fit within a framework of, fear and love and all of these things. Obviously, we want all love all the time, but just like that tree must grow, that squirrel better watch, out, because
right, something might eat him, right? And then
something might eat him. So we do need that cortisol. We do need those things, but we're being manipulated. because we are constantly thinking that we're being chased. We're constantly living in that prey mentality. And for all intents and purposes, we are prey. We are prey to our life forces, our food.
Right.
So that's a very, for someone who's just sort of hearing this now, this is a lot of, it's hard to sort of differentiate, because, you know, we have this idea of that Timofey was sharing of, well, let's just not always go to choice. You know, it doesn't always have to be this over that, red over blue, black over white, you know, gay over straight, whatever. But it still seems like it is that, because we're talking about organic life matter, which is benevolent, and AI, which, you know, has, as a tool, has the power to be quite ambivalent. So isn't this an overarching choice between good and evil? And what's the difference between that and, you know, the everyday battles that we get distracted by?
Can I jump in on this one real quick? I think the good and evil part of it is when we externalize everything. And it's that predator prey thing that Reed was just talking about. But it's also, you know, kind of a part of nature. But to me, nature is sort of an expression of the soul. You know, there's death, rebirth. I mean, we just see the cycles, seasons, plants die, come back the following year, or reseed itself somewhere. So life never really ends. Death is cyclical. Death is not an end. I think the good and evil part is just where the mind just is externalizing everything to the point that we see light and dark as maybe light is good and dark is bad, but we know dark's not bad. Most people with any kind of common sense knows that dark's not bad, but it's associated with negativity to a certain degree. When we say like dark agendas, we're not talking about like the night sky. We're not talking about the, we're referring to it as a way to describe something that, so, because we're in the dark and we have to face the dark. We have to understand the dark is like soil. It's the womb, it's the creative cauldron, and it births life. When we plant seeds in the ground, it's dark. Life comes out of it. The night sky, you know, just everything, the integration of light and dark and masculine and feminine, that creates conception. So we need to integrate these polarities. To me, good and evil is the embodiment of that polarity integration, because the good can inform the dark within us, or the evil tendencies, or maybe where the demons have gotten the best of us, where maybe we made mistakes, certainly not to the degree of some people and groups. And, but when we are able to access that, we can inform from our higher mind those parts of ourselves that need help and need love and need forgiveness and need unconditional love and to be seen. Because you can break through a person's programming when you talk to their soul instead of their program. And then sometimes you can disarm them and they all of a sudden are not holding this shell of emptiness. And I also just, one thing in order to maintain like happiness or love, or how to just kind of like maintain, is to understand there's different levels of love. So if it's about the acorn, I mean, that's a form of self-love, to be intelligent enough to know, you know, on a love level, I love myself enough to make sure I have enough acorns. But it's different than being like able to enjoy the love of maybe cuddling with the squirrel, or like just having fun and playing in the trees. And all of a sudden it's like, you got to get busy. So I think it's just love has to be so expansive that we invest love into everything that we do, and we become the love that we are. And that, my friend Kathy always says that. That we embody the love that we are. Because sometimes it's not always easy to have self-love. If we're sitting here, oh, I love myself, I love myself. Sometimes we just have to embody the love that we are. And I think it keeps us sharp. I think it keeps us connected to our higher guidance and wisdom. And we have to remember that it's very obvious when something needs to be cleaned when we look at it in the physical world. We can look at a kitchen or a bathroom and say, this is gross, this needs to be cleaned. There's no way I can cook a meal if I leave the dishes here and the food out. Rats are going to come, mice are going to come, fungus is going to grow, it's going to get really gross. I remember I was raising twins, though I still kind of, well, they're grown now. And there's so many dishes. I just threw them out and bought new ones. I went to the thrift store, but it's just like, it's so easy to see. I don't know why I just had to insert that, but it's so easy to see with our eyes. Oh, okay, well, yeah, this needs to be clean. for creativity to prosper so that the next meal can be made. But we don't necessarily think about the mental accumulation that can build up, that we're not cleaning on a daily basis, or the emotional heaviness or toxicity that we're carrying that we need to clear so that we're not depressed or feeling heavy, and the spiritual hygiene that we need to maintain so that archons aren't feeding on us and we can just stay like real solid and really real with ourselves so that we know what we need. We can sense when we're hungry, when we need sleep. We can be more in the rhythm of nature and answer to ourselves so that when we feel pain or have a physical symptom, it informs us about what we need so we can get closer to ourselves instead of freak out and give the power away to a doctor to give us something to maybe make it go away. How are we initiating if we make things go away like it doesn't exist? So we need to be willing to face the difficult parts and shine love and light on it and watch the wounds and the pain turn into diamonds and crystals. And yeah, just daily hygiene, I would say, of multiple layers of who we are, not just the physical realm. And some people, don't care about the physical realm. And, to each their own, of course. I got piles of clothes to fold myself. So anyway.
How many times have we said, bomb the kitchen? Honey, we're buying a new kitchen. I'm done with this kitchen. Jesse, you said something a few minutes ago about our nervous systems being accessed, used, and I thought you were striking at a great analogy, which is the problem the music or the problem the volume of the music? Like, I'm not so sure a different song is playing in the world today than if somebody's turning up the volume so loud, it's doing damage in the world today. And it's also drowning out our ability to hear and perceive all the other signals of life. So it's like the introduction of noise, signal to noise. Can we see this, or can we perceive the signal? And I see New York City at the end of your name, Jesse. So you're in the thick of the forest, right? And so with the COVID crisis and economic crisis and everything mounting, it's this noise factor. And I think we're all seeking ways of maintaining ourselves, like you're saying, Laura, like self-maintenance in this world at the physical level, just at the level of your body, your sleep rhythm, everything is becoming much more challenging. And so it's requiring a whole new set of practices, spiritual practices as well, to function. It's not a given to be able to function in a world like this. And so I think it's a great topic, Jesse, to go further into, which is how can we function in this world such that we can stay ourselves? Like you were saying, Rebecca, at the beginning, what you're offering is like, stay yourself. Don't become someone you're not, something you're not. And I think that's not so easy these days. We're almost, we're taking in so much, and things that are not actually us are being ascribed to us, associated with us, stamped on us, hashtagged on us, or like you're being, forced to choose, like you're saying, Timothy, what's it going to be, black or white? And so how to function in that kind of a world, I feel like that's a theme that's kind of resonant right now between us.
Right. And also not only how to function, also sort of how to navigate. You look at the climate crisis, in what's happening in, British Columbia and BC, all along the West Coast. Is this climate change? Is it not the Amazon burning down? Is this something that was man-made, or is this a natural process? You're right. I live in New York. I go to a protest just about every weekend, of some kind or another. And I guess researching, all of you and the sort of the topic of transhumanism, the first things that come up to me, of course, is I noticed a lot of anti-abortion sentiment. And I noticed a lot of it's Christian leaning, which is not inherently wrong, but it's of note to me as a non-Christian. I'm not saying I don't believe in God or a God or a higher power, but I'm not necessarily Christian. And then transphobia is a big one, and so I was most certainly reticent. Of course, I came into this conversation like I do most conversations, just keep an open mind. And of course, I've learned an incredible amount, and I'd love to continue on the journey. But I guess, and I'm also Black, so of course identity politics has infiltrated science, it's infiltrated social media, of course, and it's integrated politics, itself. Personally, I don't know, as my opinion, I don't know if that's totally a bad thing, because I want to see more Black people in politics. I want to see more trans people in politics, gay people, lesbians in politics. I want to see me and my friends, in positions of power. So, if not to divert the topic, I think this is actually right on topic. How do I go about my day-to-day? How do I know? What is a trick? What is something meant to distract me? And what should I really be paying attention to? Because it's I guess on some level, it is all connected to a larger, grander agenda, and of course we were talking about all the different factors involved in that. But to a Black trans sex worker, for instance, and I hate to use that identity as an example in this hypothetical situation, because those are humans, but why does that matter to her? Why should that matter to her? And just, I guess, the last little point to that, and then I'll let you tear that apart. But how is she meant to gain access to this information? And why should she? Why should she? When her day-to-day is, in survival mode, and that goes for anyone in survival mode. If someone is living in survival mode beyond a point of, I'm sitting here, my basic needs are met, I'm fed, I've slept, I've got a roof over my head, I'm in a place where I can hear this right now. If I were homeless, or if I were afraid for my life, whether that's a sort of a fantasy created by, the government, or whether I'm in Afghanistan, that's also man-made and caused by man, but it's how do I organize around that? And so just to sum all that together, what role does activism play within this movement? And is there room for more than one movement within this particular movement that we're talking about?
I'll go real quick so everybody has time. I just, it's a really tough and touchy thing. I think there's larger issues that we're blaming one another for that have nothing to do with us, that has to do with the system, and just the way indoctrination has happened, different world wars, different scenarios, and a lot of history that's been written out, a lot of Holocausts that weren't even noted. And there's a much, much bigger picture that we don't look at. And I'm just afraid that it starts a chain of events where—
I'm sorry to interrupt, but right here in Canada, we've just discovered 5,000 children. The Catholic Church has genocided children as recently as the 1970s. The last residential school closed in the 1990s. So this is something that's going on, not just in some faraway place, it's happening
right.
sort of in real time. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, yeah. So there's just so much going on. And I feel that there's certain narratives, not necessarily coming from the people, but they're just kind of streaming through, I don't know, maybe with trolls or bots or just something to kind of get people all worked up, that really drops people's energy. I feel sometimes, and this isn't necessarily for the, trans or, race, but just sometimes just in any instance of, sort of victim conscious, where all you notice is being offended. All you notice is people that don't like you or they have an issue with you. And I remember holding on to that when I was just walking around, and I just would feel like, oh, people are looking at me funny because I was a chick with dreadlocks, or I went to school barefoot sometimes, or I had the worst attendance in high school, and the stigmas of like, oh, you have learning disabilities, or you're this and you're that. I was like, man, this is going to crush me if I hold on to this. I have to dance like nobody's looking. I have to love myself. I have to be strong in who I am, pursue my dreams, regardless of what anybody has to say. If somebody has an issue with me, they need to get out of my way, because those aren't people I really want in my life. And I feel there's so much more love for diversity than people can imagine. And we are going to be more in a world that celebrates that diversity, but on a creativity level, I feel like sometimes people are carrying a heavy sort of victim energy where you can't say anything. And you can't have a real conversation. It's like everybody's offended and everybody's triggered. And just real quick, I remember like when I lived on the road, I didn't have any money. I remember, later on, the same thing happened when I had kids. And I'm like, I'm screwed, and I had this sort of lack consciousness or poverty consciousness, or I'm a loser, or I failed, or like, but I didn't really like totally feel that. But when I was holding that energy, nothing flowed. Predatory kind of people would find me and kind of like almost want to take advantage of me. But when I said I'm abundant, I'm empowered, I'm exactly where I need to be, and I shifted my perspective, I was like pulling money out of the ground. I was meeting cool people, and the synchronicities showed up because I changed my perspective. I wasn't in the kind of victim thing. So I think that there's something pushing and triggering that in people when I feel that amongst us, it doesn't really exist. But for some, it might, because maybe past lives, or maybe they are a bit programmed. But I mean, we just have to kind of forgive and not let it offend. It could be something we just don't fully understand. I mean, I watched a show about kids remembering past lives, and the white boy was a black woman in the past life. So he understood that innately in his soul, and he's telling his mom all about it, but now he's a white little 4-year-old. So it was interesting that we have a much greater soul history. And I think diversity is the greatest blessing ever. And I look forward to that vision that you hold coming to life. And I think activism is important in an empowering and celebratory way of self-love and camaraderie, which I know you hold. I'm just saying what I'm noticing in social media. So sorry if that was too long, but I hope that made sense.
No, because it's interesting, because I am aware, our elite overlords have, through Netflix, allowed us to learn about how Russia, no offense, Timothy, I don't know if this is even true. Okay, this is what I heard. All right.
It's okay. Go
has
ahead.
been, sending information, has been sort of like egging us on to start like civil war amongst, between Black people and white people, or more specifically between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. And I actually agree with what you were saying to a certain extent, in that these are identity markers, are not as important as they're imposed upon us. They're only as important as they are imposed upon us, but they are imposed upon us. So whether or not, I think it's a separate thing in a way, that whether or not Black Lives Matter was, we were gaslighted into Black Lives Matter. A police officer did, actually kill a man, and not an innocent man, but a man who didn't deserve necessarily, but a man who didn't deserve to die by any means. And then it uncovered a lot of like real pain and real trauma, which is probably what caused the reaction to be so incendiary. So what should we have done instead of march in the streets? What should we have done instead of, I mean, I guess I have my own answer to that, but I'm not trying to answer that. I'm genuinely curious as to what are the right, how could that not have happened? How could that have happened differently?
Everywhere, people dying everywhere. 24,000 Australian kids have been dragged off away from their parents getting the jab, and 2 of them died. I don't see any outrage there. I just feel like it's a mess everywhere, and we have to address all these things, including what you're talking about. But I just feel like we need to, that was an asshole cop, but that's not all white men. And that's where I get frustrated.
Right. So not all white men. Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's not, absolutely not. My brother is white, you know. I don't really be talking to him like that right now, and it was actually that did it. But
Jesse,
yeah,
may I try to answer your question?
yeah. Please go ahead. I guess I'll come back to that.
I'll be short. First of all, you were asking of how can I know whether I do right or whether I do wrong? Am I correct? So
Yeah.
how can I define? I believe that there is an ultimate criterion. When you do something, when you perform an action, or you or it's a physical deed, or it's not doing something, or you're saying something, the criterion is whether what you will do, will it strengthen life or will it destroy life in all its aspects and manifestations. So I'm going to say something. Will it strengthen life? Life meaning all its manifestations, maybe someone's health, someone's mental health, someone's mood, or your mood, or your health. So whether what I will do will strengthen life or not. And one peculiarity which we encounter in everyday life and maybe throughout our lives, it's one interesting thing. What you focus on is going to occur and grow. So if you're focusing on struggling or providing evidence or defending yourself, it will grow. So if you're focusing on transcending a conflict or suppressing fire, I don't know, what have you, it will eventually happen.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you understand from the perspective of some, from this perspective, to me, it seems like it's easy to transcend something when it's time to address it. You know what I mean? And just to go back, I think I heard what you said, but just to go back to Laura's comment about, not all white men. Of course, not all white men, but like pretty much all cops are protected in the eyes of the law. And that it wasn't just an emotion that was struck. It was like real, like empirical inequities that are like, how do you deny that? So I mean, it's as me, right? Me, the one person hearing that now. So an entire timeline, slavery, civil rights movement, Rodney King, George Floyd, now we've got police brutality. Now it's time to transcend all of that. Let's not talk about it because it's like, aren't there some things we need to address before we, start meditating? And, it's not to say that I don't think we should all meditate. If everyone meditated for 15 minutes a day, we probably would have at least a lot less arguments throughout the day. But
I mean, Jesse, to go back to activism,
yeah.
I'm not even quite sure why you're questioning whether we should have gone out onto the streets. I mean, it was totally just to respond that way. Now, the question is how far to take it, right? And to Timothy's point, is it taking away from life? At a certain point, too much of a good thing is not a good thing, right? I mean, you can do damage in a cause, and that damage cannot far outweigh the benefit. But I mean, great actions need to be taken. Enormous activism, multiple movements within a movement. I mean, absolutely. And I think this is a moment of conscience. It's like conscience does not sit and meditate and feel the following 12 beneficial emotions. I mean, conscience is you're on this planet, you don't know why, but you're targeted. You got somewhere to go, something to do, someone to meet, something to contribute. Go. And if you're not going, you're going to feel stuck and ambivalent and confused. And the solution is not an overlay of spirituality or an overlay of cosmology. It's, what do you need to do? And so that people are taking these actions is really important. What I was going to recommend, though, is that real change, enacting real change in the world, starts with ourselves. I mean, you are the actor, and you're actually an actor, I believe, so you know this. Like, if you're going to produce a movie and you're one of the actors, it does start with you, you know, and we do have to do the work. I mean, if people don't do the work, they're going to go out mindlessly. And in the end, they're just going to be basically an automaton working on somebody else's agenda, not knowing it. So, I mean, if you're not in possession of your emotional states, you know, what you've been through, how that impacts you, what your idealisms are, your ambitions are, your fears are, like, you have to do the work if you're going to step out onto the stage of life and be an actor in this unfolding drama and contribute to it. And so
I get to keep all of those. I get to keep all of those strong-held beliefs of my own.
Well, no. You need to understand what's there, and then you need to understand your values concerning it. Like, being an angry person may be against your values. And so once you know what's there and you know what you value in life, then you can decide in a moment whether to allow that voice to speak through you or a deeper voice to speak through you, something deeper than that. And so, but you can't make those decisions if you're not in possession of yourself, if you're just out of control emotionally, mentally, or in your, you know, relationships, your career. So what I was going to say is, in my view, where does it all start? Because you asked that a while back. It starts with being an individual. You know, we've been in states of dependence. Moving from that is independence, and then interdependence. How do we achieve interdependence? By becoming an autonomous individual in possession of ourselves, who can actually make decisions that are our own, that we can think thoughts that are our own. If until that moment, we can be the arrow that flies from the bow, but we're not the person pulling back the arrow. We're not the person pointing the bow and the arrow together. So I really feel this is the era of individual responsibility, our ability to respond to life as individuals. And there's a broad arena of work to do there that starts with us. And it doesn't rely on empowered, privileged groups. It doesn't rely on the conspirators revealing their agendas. You can do this regardless of all of that. And if you do, I believe there's a deeper power within us, what I would call knowledge, or, you know, a noetic mind, a deeper spiritual mind, that will move us. But if we're not even an individual, that's going to be very difficult to do, because we're just wired in. We're like one strand in a fabric, and knowledge, this deeper mind, can't move that strand. It's too wired in mindlessly. And so my hope is that people can become strong and capable and grounded individuals in possession of their lives and their human vehicle, mind, body, spirit, so that something can move through us that would be very unique. And I do believe it would be a specific movement to solve whatever it's race inequality, gender inequality. You brought up the situation of, a homeless person who's African American and transsexual, and like that's a human being, right? Who needs, they need to be an individual, but then there's others who they could serve as their individual. And so there's a movement out via individuals who can then go beyond their individuality and enter some level of interdependence with one another, but for a purpose. And planet Earth is presenting us with thousands of purposes, that we could respond to. And so when I look out, I see people very disengaged from responding to any purpose other than their personal agenda, and whatever that's getting rich, being happy, checking out, being entertained, like that's a very disengaged person.
That's their program.
Yeah. They're owned by a program. And of course, is somebody writing the program? Of course, all programs are written. So we shouldn't be surprised that there's a conspiracy to write a program. But what is the solution? Is it to attack the programmer? Is it to replace them? For us to be the programmer, transhumanism, we're going to program it. Or is it to become yourself again? And then be able to move from that position to do something that's inherently intelligent and in touch with the needs of life, that's responsive to the needs of life. So that's what I teach, and what I hope others can, begin to, and I'm sure you all are involved in this in some ways as well. So, I mean, for me, that's beyond philosophy, that's beyond agenda. You can be Christian, Muslim, atheist, you can be Black, white, Russian, you can be anyone in the world and become yourself and tap into your native strengths, your native abilities, and yes, your record going back through time in many lifetimes, the achievements you've made coming to serve you now and to serve the world now.
Right. I mean, we have our ancestors behind us.
Yeah.
It took however many people, you know, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of people, just for you, Reed, for you, Lord, Timothy, Rebecca. We all have, we have an entourage, you know, and so I think that's, but everyone has ancestors. That's the thing too about it too, you know, and I guess those I do appreciate the sort of these measured sort of responses, and I'd like to hear from you, Rebecca. And just
I was just going to come back to what you said about, you were talking about Russia and, you know, Black Lives Matter versus, you know, all lives matter. And you were sort of talking about, you said, have we been tricked? And I think in indigenous cultures, you're raised to recognize the trickster. And the trickster is part of Native American culture, certainly, but it's part of all culture. And we have to realize that that's a fundamental force that moves through life. And part of maturing is moving through that realization that I got tricked. You know, I thought it was this and it was that. And it's a very painful self-awareness that many of us are working through. I mean, this whole thing that we've been talking about really much of it was seeded in World War II with the whole shell shock, soldiers coming back from shell shock, and Tavistock went, wow, you know, what made these people go crazy? Why did they go schizophrenic? Why so much noise in culture today? Well, it all goes back to those original psychologists that studied those phenomenon to actually divide us, to ratchet up the volume and intensity of culture today. And they do it with an artificial field, and it's done through AI. I just finished a book on transhumanism and exoconsciousness, and I started researching how many of our news stories are, and what we hear on, whether it's television or our newsfeed on our phones, how much of it is just written by AI. It's not written by humans anymore. And it's almost probably close to 90% now, but you can hardly pick out the threads to even find out about it anymore because it's so buried. And things that I was pulling out, you know, 5 years ago, those sources aren't there anymore. So we all think that these journalists are writing all these stories and reporting all this news when it's an algorithm. And how do you fight against an algorithm? How do you protest against an algorithm? I don't know how you do that, but it's a reality in our life today. And that's part of the trickster. But what I see is that algorithm of separation and intensification and drama and trauma that's moving across our planet is one force. But the other force is that whoever you are, as Reed has just so eloquently said, you're settling down to the fact that you're a natural human consciousness, and that's what matters, and that you can discern and navigate your way across this ocean of chaos, and you're going to be okay, and you're going to land in safe harbor with other humans and with other beings that surround us, with whom you've chosen to collaborate with. But it may be a rough voyage for the next few years.
Yeah, possibly decades, if we're so lucky, you know. Sorry, go ahead, Timothy.
I just wanted to add 2 little lines here. I loved what Reed said about doing things, acting, as they say in an airport, doors open when you walk. So you first have to walk, and then doors open. So if you wait for the doors to open, they will not. You will just need to start walking, and immediately they will open. And the first thing I wanted to say, and then the second thing is, Jesse, you were asking, what should I personally do? You already did. You gathered all us from different places of the world, and we are discussing such important things. That's cooperation. That's connection. So thank you, Jesse. You're already doing things.
Well, we
So
have.
go ahead. Keep it up.
You know, we have producers here. It's a huge collaboration, and I appreciate being brought on board to do this interview. They're probably grinding their teeth watching. But you know, I mean, I really appreciated this line of discussion. We are coming short on time. I'll give everyone a second to add what they want to say before we do our plugs. But I want to thank you all for participating, for keeping, you know, open mind. I hope that we didn't hijack the topic. I hope everyone got as much out as you know, maybe they wanted to. We could have gone all day, I'm sure, and still had, you know, layers of that onion, you know. Lots comes to mind from all of your all of your narratives, and I love to hear the way they've come together. And you know, I do believe this is an earnest and noble pursuit. It's really not a hostile questioning from coming from my end. I just really, I'm just a curious guy, you know. And yeah, if anybody wants to add anything or say anything, it just might take me a couple seconds just to pull up our links here to see how we can keep how people can keep in touch with you. So or we can just do the plugs. So Rebecca Hardcastle Wright, your book is Exoconscious Humans: Will Free Will Survive in an Increasingly Non-Human World? Your website is RebeccaHardcastleWright.com. Is that correct?
And exoconsciousness.com.
Exoconsciousness.com it will redirect you. We'll get you there too. Or that's the current website. That's also your Instagram, correct? Perfect. Timofey, we have the Russian non-governmental nonprofit organization for the study of all kinds of anomalous phenomena, including UFOs, Association Ecology of the Unknown. That website is en.ecology-unknown.ru. That link will be in the description. International social movement for the promotion of peaceful existence in outer space, the ethics of the cosmos. Very on brand from what I've gathered thus far. ecologyunknown.ru/the-ethics of the cosmos. That is also in the description. And then let's do Laura, I'm sorry, I couldn't find, do you have a book or a website where people can reach you? Or what's the best way to keep in touch with you? And also, do you have private sessions or just?
I don't do sessions so much anymore. My website's cosmicgaia.org, and I'm on a new platform, which is censorship free, called Conscious Vitality. I do a show once a week. I have YouTube, Laura Eisenhower. I just got put back on after getting banned. And all my information is on my website. My books are going to be out soon, and all sorts of cool projects. And I'll try and keep it updated, but that's the best place to find me, cosmicgaia.org. And join my Telegram. You'll find it on my homepage. I post a lot there.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so that link will be in the description as well. And then we have Reed. I've got your links here, alliesofhumanity.org and newmessage.org. That's where people can find you and sort of digest all of this information. Guys, I really hope that this was a productive conversation, that everyone got as much as they could out of it, and that they access your wealth of information, as I've been so lucky to do today. So for the Toronto Business Journal, I want to say thank you, and thanks to everyone, and goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
all of you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank
Jesse.
you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
See you later.
Interesting conversation. Very interesting topics.
Why not?
Was this your idea, or were you passed this topic and this opportunity from somebody else?
Yeah, they found me on Craigslist, and so I just was sort of out here. I am Canadian, so that was total coincidence. I just thought to go at the interview and in as earnest a way as possible. We had a contract, and I did my part, obliged to that. I did my best to oblige to the criteria they gave me, and like I said, I hope it was constructive. I have a feeling that a conversation like that would be a lot more engaging than a ho-hum, your turn type conversation. So I hope it was productive and that they
Where will it appear, Jesse? Where will the video go?
So this will be on YouTube. If I'm not mistaken, Toronto Business Journal has a website called Toronto Business Daily.
Okay.
So you'll be able to link from there. I don't really know how they do if they put it up on Instagram or if they link how they do from other places, but it goes through the Toronto Business Journal. You can check them out on.
Got it.
on
Okay. Very good. And you did hit record in Zoom, right? I see the
I
record
did.
button. Oh, good. Woo.
You scared me.
Sorry. I live in Zoom, and I'm often the one clicking that button. So I'm like,
I have nightmares about that, actually.
Yes.
I'm glad that we do have that. Okay, y'all.
All right,
Have a
Jeff.
good one.
See you.
Okay, see you. Bye.
See you later.